She only got promoted because she's pretty. The words slid across the conference room, each syllable like a pebble breaking the professional silence. I felt 30 pairs of eyes turn toward me in unison. Micah stood there, arms crossed over his wrinkled button-up, the smugness radiating from him in waves. My PowerPoint presentation glowed on the screen behind me, displaying months of research, innovation, and dedication that apparently meant nothing to him. The room temperature seemed to rise 10 degrees as colleagues shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some looked away, while others watched for my reaction with undisguised curiosity. The morning light streamed through the blinds, illuminating the dust particles dancing between us, marking the longest 10 seconds of my career. I gripped my tablet tighter, knuckles whitening, but kept my expression neutral. I'd prepared for everything today except character assassination. I just think we all deserve to know what qualifications actually led to this promotion. Micah continued, drawing nervous chuckles from his corner supporters. Because from where I'm standing, the door swung open. In walked our company president alongside 3 board members, carrying something large covered in velvet. Their unexpected presence sent everyone scrambling to attention, but I remained frozen at the front, my professional humiliation interrupted by confusion. The president caught my eye and smiled. "Perfect timing," he said. "We have a special announcement before today's presentation begins. Before I tell you what happened next, let me introduce myself properly. I'm recording this story because so many people have asked how I managed to turn what should have been the most humiliating moment of my career into my greatest triumph. If you're watching this, you're probably facing your own workplace bully or feeling undervalued despite your contributions. Listen until the end, because what I did next changed not just my career trajectory, but transformed our entire company culture. And if you find this helpful, please consider subscribing to support more stories of professional resilience. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. My name is Arden Hayes. At 32, I was the only female lead engineer at NextWave Energy Solutions, a mid-sized firm specializing in sustainable building systems. I'm not what people typically picture when they think engineer. I'm 5'3" with naturally curly auburn hair that refuses to be tamed and a wardrobe consisting mainly of vintage dresses paired with practical boots. I speak 4 languages, collect antique calculators, and spend most Saturdays volunteering at a STEM program for girls. What most of my colleagues didn't know was that I grew up in a trailer park in rural Pennsylvania with a single mother who worked 3 jobs to put me through school. My childhood bedroom doubled as our dining room, and my desk was a repurposed ironing board. I earned my engineering scholarship by building a solar-powered water filtration system from discarded electronics I'd gathered from neighborhood trash. That morning, before Micah's public attack, I'd arrived at 5:30 a.m. as usual, 2 hours before anyone else. I'd developed this habit during my 3 years at NextWave. Early mornings alone in the office gave me space to think without interruption. The janitor, Irving, always saved his vacuuming of the engineering department for last, knowing I preferred the quiet. "Big day today, Miss Arden?" he asked, emptying my trash bin. "Quarterly review and my first presentation as team lead," I replied, triple-checking my slides. Irving nodded. "About time they recognized your work. That cooling system you designed is something special." Irving knew more about my projects than most of my teammates. He'd often find me working late, testing prototypes after hours when the lab was empty. He'd bring me coffee and ask questions that sometimes led to unexpected breakthroughs. Unlike my colleagues, Irving really saw me, working. My journey at NextWave hadn't been easy. I started in a junior position despite having the same qualifications as my male counterparts who began at mid-level. Rather than complain, I decided to prove myself through results. While others networked at company happy hours or played politics, I developed a revolutionary cooling system that could reduce energy consumption in industrial buildings by nearly 40%. For 18 months, I worked on this project in addition to my regular assignments. Early mornings, late nights, weekends, I poured everything into it. I studied emerging materials, consulted with professors from my alma mater, and built 7 different prototypes before finding the perfect design. I tested it repeatedly, documenting every failure and success. When the final prototype exceeded even my expectations, I quietly submitted it to senior management with a comprehensive business implementation plan. 3 weeks later, I was promoted to team lead. The position Micah had assumed would be his. Micah Donovan had been at NextWave for 5 years. Tall, conventionally attractive, and from a wealthy family with connections throughout the industry, he'd always been fast-tracked. We'd started in the same department, but he quickly moved up while I remained in my entry-level role. He had an impressive education and spoke with the confidence that comes from never having been questioned. Clients liked him, management trusted him, and he knew it. When my promotion was announced, the shock on his face was momentary but unmistakable. He congratulated me with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Well deserved," he said, though his tone suggested otherwise. The weeks following my promotion were filled with subtle undermining. He'd question my decisions in meetings, interrupt my explanations, and helpfully correct me on technical points I hadn't actually gotten wrong. He'd schedule team lunches when I had standing appointments with clients. Projects I'd previously led were suddenly collaborative efforts requiring his oversight. I documented everything but kept my head down, focusing on excellence rather than office politics. I made allies by recognizing my team members' contributions and giving them opportunities to showcase their talents. I stayed late to help junior engineers understand complex systems. I learned everyone's names, not just engineers but maintenance staff, administrative assistants, and security guards. But Micah's campaign against me grew bolder as the quarterly review approached. Whispers reached me, suggestions that I'd used other methods to secure my promotion. Comments about my appearance being my real qualification, questions about my technical capabilities. The morning of the review, I dressed carefully in a structured navy dress, professional, understated, armor against scrutiny. I arrived extra early to set up the conference room, arranging handouts and testing the projection system twice. Everything needed to be perfect. As team members filed in, I greeted each one by name. Most returned my smile, though some, Micah's closer allies, barely acknowledged me. Micah arrived last, making an entrance in an expensive suit, flanked by 2 junior engineers who laughed at whatever he was saying. I began the meeting with a brief overview of our quarterly achievements. Before I dive into specific projects, I want to acknowledge everyone's contributions. Engineering is collaborative. And, speaking of contributions, Micah interrupted, standing up. "I think there's something we should address." The room went silent. I paused, giving him space to continue, curious where this was going, though I had my suspicions. "There's been some confusion about the recent leadership changes," he said, looking around the room rather than at me. "And I think transparency is important in a technical field like ours." He finally turned to me, his expression a mix of concern and condescension. "Arden, you're well liked here. You have a great personality. You bring a certain aesthetic quality to the department." Several people shifted uncomfortably. I remained still, expression neutral. "But some of us are wondering about the technical justification for your promotion. What specific innovations or revenue-generating projects have you led? Because from our perspective, it seems like certain non-engineering qualities were given priority." That's when he said it. "She only got promoted because she's pretty." The words hung in the air between us as my colleagues' reactions ranged from embarrassed glances to subtle nods. 3 years of work, countless overtime hours, the cooling system that I'd poured my heart and mind into, all reduced to my appearance. And then the door opened, and the company president walked in. The velvet cloth covered something large and frame-like. As the president approached the front of the room, everyone fell silent. Even Micah returned to his seat, though his expression remained defiant. "I apologize for interrupting," President Eliana Valdez said, "but we received some news this morning that couldn't wait." Her eyes found mine. "Arden, would you join me up front?" Confused, I moved to stand beside her as she addressed the room. 3 months ago, Arden submitted a revolutionary cooling system design to our RD department. We were so impressed that we fast-tracked testing and submitted it to the National Sustainable Engineering Innovation Awards without informing Arden, as we wanted to surprise her if it placed. My heart began racing as I realized what was happening. Not only did it place, President Valdez continued, Arden's design won first prize among over 300 submissions from companies across the country. She nodded to the board members, who removed the velvet cloth to reveal an oversized check for $250,000 and a crystal trophy engraved with my name. This is the highest honor in our industry for sustainable innovation, the president explained. The judging panel, composed of leading engineers and climate scientists, was unanimous in their decision. Arden's cooling system design will revolutionize energy consumption in commercial buildings, with projected savings of 38% compared to current systems. She turned to me, genuine admiration in her eyes. This is why you were promoted, Arden. And this is why, effective immediately, we're creating a new position for you, Vice President of Sustainable Innovation. Shock rippled through the room. Micah's face drained of color as whispers erupted among my colleagues. Additionally, the president continued, 3 major manufacturers have already approached us about licensing agreements. The patent is approved, with Arden named as primary inventor, and the licensing deals are projected to bring in over $12 million in the first year alone. She handed me the trophy and check, then shook my hand as camera flashes went off. The company photographer had slipped in to document the moment. Would you like to say a few words? She asked. I stepped forward, acutely aware of every eye in the room, particularly Micah's stunned gaze. This was my moment, my opportunity for vindication after his public humiliation attempt. I could destroy him with a few well-chosen words, highlighting his ignorance about a project that had been developing right under his nose. Instead, I took a deep breath and smiled. Thank you for this incredible honor. This innovation didn't happen overnight. It required hundreds of hours of research, testing, and refinement. While I'm deeply grateful for this recognition, what matters most to me is the impact this technology will have on energy consumption and sustainability. I scanned the room, making brief eye contact with everyone, including Micah. Great engineering isn't about appearances or personalities. It's about solving problems that matter. I couldn't have done this without the supportive environment NextWave provides, where ideas can flourish regardless of where or whom they come from. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous level. As it died down, I added one more thing. I've prepared a comprehensive presentation on how this system works and its potential applications. But first, I'm curious. What questions do you have about the technical aspects of the design? I looked directly at Micah as the question hung in the air. His jaw tightened as he realized the position he was in. He just publicly claimed my promotion was based solely on my appearance, and now he'd have to either admit his ignorance about my award-winning design or attempt to fake knowledge he didn't possess. Several hands shot up around the room. I called on Elodie, a talented junior engineer who'd always been respectful. Could you explain how you overcame the thermal efficiency problems that have plagued similar systems? She asked. I nodded appreciatively. Great question. The key breakthrough came when I redesigned the heat exchange matrix using a nanomaterial composite that— If I may interrupt, Micah said, standing again. His recovery was impressively quick. His tone shifted to collegial. I think what everyone's really wondering is why this project was developed in secret instead of through proper team channels. Transparency is core to our values here. President Valdez raised an eyebrow. Actually, Mr. Donovan, Arden documented every step of her process. The project logs show she invited collaboration from anyone interested during 3 separate department meetings. The sign-up sheet shows only 2 people responded. I remembered those meetings clearly. I'd presented my initial concept as an optional side project for anyone interested in sustainability innovation. Most people had been too busy with immediate deadlines or hadn't seen the potential. The only 2 who signed up were Irving the janitor, who had valuable insights about maintenance, accessibility, and Prisha, a new hire straight out of graduate school. Perhaps you were absent those days, I offered Micah, keeping my tone neutral. But I'd be happy to send you the complete development documentation. It's quite extensive. Over 300 pages of technical specifications, test results, and iteration notes. Micah's smile tightened. That won't be necessary. I'm familiar with the basic principles involved. Excellent, I said, seeing my opening. Then perhaps you could help me explain the triple phase exchange component? It's rather complex, and having another voice might make it clearer for everyone. The trap was set. Either he admitted ignorance about a project he should have known about as a senior engineer, or he attempted to explain something he didn't understand to a room full of technical experts and board members. Micah chose the latter. Of course, he said confidently, walking to the front. The triple phase exchange is essentially a thermodynamic process where energy transfers through three distinct states. The primary conduction layer interfaces with the secondary matrix to create an efficiency multiplier effect. He was stringing together technical-sounding terms without any actual substance. I watched as the board members exchanged glances. The engineers in the room who understood thermodynamics started to look uncomfortable. Could you elaborate on how the efficiency multiplier effect works with the variable temperature gradients? I asked innocently. Sweat appeared on his brow. The gradients, yes, they fluctuate in response to external conditions, creating a dynamic equilibrium that optimizes energy transfer. It was complete nonsense, and everyone with technical training knew it. That's an interesting interpretation, I said carefully. Perhaps I should clarify for everyone. The triple phase exchange doesn't actually rely on traditional thermodynamic principles. It's a biomimetic approach based on how certain deep-sea creatures regulate their temperature in extreme environments. For the next 20 minutes, I delivered a presentation that had been months in preparation. I explained each component of my design with clarity and precision, acknowledging the researchers whose work had inspired different elements. I showed test results, prototype iterations, and the final design specifications. Throughout my explanation, Micah remained standing awkwardly at the side of the room, unable to leave without drawing more attention to himself. When I finished, the questions came rapidly from excited colleagues, genuine technical inquiries that showed they now saw me as an innovation leader rather than just the pretty one. Micah slipped back to his seat, phone in hand, suddenly intensely interested in his screen. The meeting concluded with President Valdez announcing a company-wide celebration for the following week and asking me to prepare a more detailed presentation for our major clients. As everyone filed out, offering congratulations, Micah approached me. His public persona was intact, smiling, hand extended. Congratulations, Arden. Quite the achievement. His voice was pleasant, but his eyes were cold. Though, I wonder if you've considered the implementation challenges in actual buildings. Theory and practice are very different. Before I could respond, President Valdez joined us. Actually, Micah, that's our next step. I'm creating a pilot implementation team, and I'd like you to be part of it, under Arden's leadership, of course. Your practical experience will complement her innovation nicely. His expression froze for a millisecond before recovering. I'd be delighted. Excellent, President Valdez said. Arden, please send me your recommendations for the rest of the team by tomorrow. I've allocated a separate budget for this initiative. After she walked away, Micah's facade dropped slightly. This isn't over, he murmured, low enough that only I could hear. One lucky break doesn't make you qualified to lead. I held his gaze steadily. You're right, Micah. Luck had nothing to do with it. The following weeks were a masterclass in passive aggression from Micah. As part of my implementation team, he attended every meeting but contributed minimally. He sent emails questioning my decisions, always copying senior management. He scheduled conflicting meetings accidentally and arrived late to critical client presentations. Meanwhile, I was adjusting to my new role as vice president. I had a new office, an assistant named Kit, and substantially more responsibility. The media caught wind of our innovation, and I found myself giving interviews to engineering publications and sustainability blogs. My calendar filled with speaking engagements and consultation requests. I maintained meticulous documentation of everything, every decision, every communication, every milestone. When Micah suggested changes that would compromise the system's efficiency, I recorded my technical reasons for declining them. When he missed deadlines, I noted it without comment. I remained unfailingly professional, never giving him ammunition to paint me as emotional or difficult. President Valdez became my mentor. meeting with me weekly to help navigate my transition to executive leadership. During one such meeting, 6 weeks after the award announcement, she brought up Micah. "How's he adapting to the new team structure?" she asked. "He's struggling with the adjustment," I replied diplomatically. "He has valuable expertise, but collaboration seems challenging for him." She nodded thoughtfully. "His quarterly performance metrics have declined significantly. Several team members have requested transfers away from his projects." She studied me carefully. "You haven't filed any complaints about his behavior." "I'm focused on results, not personalities," I said. "Admirable, but if he's obstructing progress, that's a performance issue." She tapped her pen against her notepad. "The Boston office has requested an experienced manager for their new initiative. It could be a lateral move for him. Same title, different location." The implication was clear. This was an opportunity to remove Micah from my team without overtly punishing him. Part of me wanted him gone, but another part recognized this wouldn't solve the underlying problem. "May I suggest an alternative?" I asked. "Micah has exceptional client relationship skills and technical knowledge, even if his innovation record is limited. What he lacks is perspective on how his behavior impacts others." I outlined a different approach, one that would either transform Micah into a valuable team member or give him enough rope to hang himself professionally. President Valdez listened intently, occasionally making notes. "It's unconventional," she said when I finished, "and potentially risky. Are you sure this is how you want to proceed?" "I believe in giving people chances to grow," I said, "even those who haven't extended me the same courtesy." She studied me for a long moment. "Very well. We'll try it your way first. But I want weekly updates, and if it doesn't show results within 2 months, we revisit the Boston option." I agreed, and Operation Perspective began the next day. "You want me to what?" Micah stared at me across my new office, disbelief evident in his expression. "Lead our community engagement initiative," I repeated calmly. "We're partnering with 5 local high schools to develop STEM programs focused on sustainable engineering. You'll oversee the curriculum development and mentor training." "That's not my area of expertise," he protested. "Surely there's someone better suited." "Your personnel file indicates you listed mentorship and education outreach as professional interests on your last 3 evaluations," I said, sliding the printed form across my desk. "This is an opportunity to develop those skills while raising our company profile with the next generation of engineers." His own words trapped him. He'd included those buzzwords to appear well-rounded in performance reviews, never expecting to be held accountable for them. "The program launches in 3 weeks," I continued. "You'll work primarily with students from underfunded schools in the East District. President Valdez sees this as a priority for our community standing, and the board has allocated substantial resources." Micah shifted uncomfortably. "My current projects will be redistributed appropriately," I finished for him. "This is your primary assignment for the next quarter. Your performance bonus will be tied to measurable outcomes from the program." "And if I decline?" His voice had an edge now. I maintained eye contact. "That would be disappointing, both to me and to President Valdez, who personally approved this assignment. The memo went out company-wide this morning announcing your leadership role." He was cornered, and he knew it. Refusing a high-visibility assignment championed by the president would be career suicide, especially with his recent performance issues. "Fine," he said finally. "Send me the details." "Better yet," I replied. "Your first meeting is in 30 minutes. The school principals and science teachers are gathering in Conference Room C to discuss their needs and expectations. I'll introduce you, and then it's your show." The color drained from his face. Today, I'm not prepared. Leadership often requires adapting quickly to new challenges, I said, echoing words he'd once used against me during my first presentation to clients. "I'm confident you'll rise to the occasion." As predicted, the first meeting was a disaster. Micah arrived with his usual confidence, but quickly floundered when faced with educators who asked specific questions about curriculum development, teaching methodologies, and student engagement strategies, none of which he knew anything about. He made vague promises and tried to charm his way through, but the teachers saw through his lack of preparation immediately. I observed silently from the back of the room, taking notes. When the meeting ended and the educators left, clearly underwhelmed, Micah confronted me. "This was a setup," he hissed. "You deliberately threw me into a situation where I'd fail. Actually, I gave you exactly what you've always wanted, a high-profile leadership role with executive visibility." I replied. "The difference is that in this role, your audience doesn't care about your connections or your charm. They care about substance and genuine commitment to their students." I handed him a folder. "Here's everything you need: program outlines, budget details, contact information for resources, and a schedule of milestones. You have 3 weeks to turn this around and deliver a program these schools deserve." "Why are you doing this?" he asked, genuine confusion breaking through his anger. "Because those students deserve excellence, regardless of your feelings about me," I said. "And because you're capable of more than you've shown lately. You have technical knowledge that could inspire young engineers if you choose to apply yourself." I gathered my notes and headed for the door, then paused. "One more thing. I've assigned Prisha to assist you. She has experience with educational outreach from her graduate work. I suggest you listen to her input." Prisha, the new hire who had volunteered for my cooling system project when no one else would. Bright, dedicated, and unintimidated by senior staff. Micah would hate taking guidance from her, but he needed her expertise to succeed. The next 3 weeks revealed sides of Micah I hadn't expected. At first, he approached the assignment with minimal effort, clearly expecting to put in appearances while delegating the actual work to Prisha. But something changed after his first actual visit to one of the schools. I received an unexpected email from him at 10:38 p.m., a week into the project. Subject: Program Restructure Proposal. Arden. After today's visit to Eastside Technical, I'm proposing significant changes to our approach. These students don't need abstract lectures. They need hands-on projects that connect to their lives. Attached is a revised curriculum focusing on practical applications of engineering principles to community challenges they've identified. I'll need additional materials budget and 2 more engineer volunteers for the workshop components. Prisha has agreed to lead the renewable energy module if approved. Let me know your thoughts. Micah. The attached proposal was surprisingly thoughtful, with detailed lesson plans and clear learning objectives. I approved the budget increase immediately and volunteered myself for one of the workshop positions. Over the following weeks, Micah transformed. He spent evenings developing custom projects for the students. He recruited additional volunteers from engineering departments across the company. He even used his industry connections, previously leveraged only for his advancement, to arrange field trips to manufacturing facilities and research labs. The program launch exceeded everyone's expectations. Students who had never considered engineering as a possibility were suddenly engaged and excited. Teachers reported increased attendance and participation in science classes. Local news covered the initiative, featuring interviews with Micah and students working on their projects. At the culminating event, a mini innovation fair where students presented their projects to industry professionals, I stood at the back, observing Micah. He moved from presentation to presentation, asking thoughtful questions and offering genuine encouragement. There was none of his usual performative charm, just authentic engagement with the students' ideas. President Valdez joined me, watching the scene. "Your unconventional approach seems to be working," she remarked. "I hardly recognize him." "He needed purpose beyond advancement," I said, "and to experience the impact of genuine contribution." "The board is impressed," she said. "They're considering expanding the program to all our locations next year." She gave me an appraising look. "This was never about revenge, was it?" "Revenge would have been sending him to Boston," I replied honestly. "This was about something more important." After the event, as engineers and teachers mingled over refreshments, Micah approached me. He looked different, tired but energized. His usual polished appearance slightly rumpled from a day of helping students set up their displays. "I owe you an apology," he said without preamble. "Several, actually." I waited, giving him space to continue. "I've been," he searched for words, "threatened by you since you arrived. Your talent, your work ethic, your ability to solve problems I couldn't see. It was easier to dismiss you than to acknowledge that. He glanced around at the students proudly showing off their projects. These past weeks have been clarifying. I've been so focused on titles and advancement that I forgot why I became an engineer in the first place. I nodded, recognizing the sincerity in his words. These students don't care about office politics or who has the corner office. They just want to learn and create. Exactly, he said. Working with them, seeing their excitement when something finally works after multiple failures. It reminded me of when I felt that way. He met my eyes directly. I was wrong about you, Arden. Your promotion wasn't about appearance or politics. You earned it through innovation and vision I couldn't match. It was the acknowledgement I'd never expected to hear from him. Thank you, I said simply. What will you do now? He looked thoughtful. President Valdez mentioned the possibility of making this educational initiative permanent, with dedicated leadership. I'd like to be considered for that role if you'd support it. It was my turn to be surprised. You'd leave the engineering track for education outreach? I'd still be engineering, he said. Just engineering future innovators instead of products. He smiled slightly. And honestly, I'm better at this than I expected. These students challenge me in ways corporate projects haven't in years. 2 months later, Micah became our first director of educational outreach, leading an expanded program across 12 schools. The initiative received corporate sponsorship from 3 major technology companies, and several of our engineers volunteered as regular mentors. The program was featured in a national education magazine, with Micah and several students on the cover. My cooling system moved into commercial production, with installations beginning in office buildings across the country. The energy savings exceeded even our projections, and new applications emerged in data centers and manufacturing facilities. Irving the janitor received a Special Innovation Contribution Award and a significant bonus for his input on the maintenance aspects of my design. He used the money to start college courses in facility management. Prisha was promoted to team lead, the position I'd held before becoming vice president. She brought fresh perspectives and collaborative approaches that energized the department. As for me, my journey was just beginning. The quiet engineer who had once worked in shadows now led a division at the forefront of sustainable technology. I still arrived early each morning, still spent weekends developing new ideas, but now I had a team that shared my vision and valued contribution over competition. The true revenge wasn't humiliating Micah or seeing him fail. It was creating a space where excellence was recognized regardless of gender or appearance. It was watching him grow beyond the limitations of his own biases. It was transforming our company culture through quiet persistence rather than combat. Sometimes the most powerful response to underestimation isn't proving others wrong, it's proving yourself right in ways that elevate everyone around you. If my story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement helps us share more stories of professional resilience and workplace transformation. In the comments, I'd love to hear about your experiences with workplace underestimation and how you responded. What strategies have worked for you in gaining recognition for your contributions? Remember, sometimes the quietest voices carry the most powerful ideas. Don't let anyone silence yours.